Hello, it's Kirsten Craig Carry-On back with part 2 of Drawing with Craig. So here's the line art from the previous video. I start out by finding the colors on the face once again with the eyedropper. It's definitely my friend. Feels like cheating, but it's a tool that's meant to be used. The color zones of the face help me keep the skin tone realistic. This doesn't apply to every head, but usually cool colors like a greenish blue or even gray reside near the bottom half of the head, while the warm red colors are near the nose, cheeks, and ears. The forehead is more of a light golden color since the skin is thinner here. This can be have very subtle color changes, so using layers really helps in this process. Using anything besides a white background helps distinguish colors. For example, using white makes it harder to compare because it's so bright. On a traditional painting, you can glaze over the paint to create layers. As in the last video, I'm starting big and simple, broad, large sections. I try to mimic traditional oil painting by using the least number of paint strokes by using more of my arm rather than tiny wrist movements. This adds more gesture to every line or paint stroke that I add. Now, as you funnel into more detail later into the artwork, smaller movements become more suited. Back in my grade school days, I was really into Spawn comics because the art to me was so edgy and detailed to me as a young artist. I tried to mimic that art style. And about around the same time, a little bit after Dragon Ball Z became an obsession, I was adding more anime styles into my art. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of these styles, but I never applied enough of the fundamentals my teachers were telling me. I would always start my art by doing fine little details first, like a printer expounding outwards, and I would lose any kind of gesture work from working like this. I do have some definite regrets in regards to my artistic growth, but like most things, I try to not live in the past. I'm always looking forward because to me, everything I do now affects me years into the future. And back to the painting, right now I'm using the blender to soften some of the areas. This awkward artwork only has 3 layers by the end of this video. One for the hair, face, and neck. It's often good to use as many layers as possible. Putting everything on one layer can make it difficult to adjust the color or anything for that matter. In upcoming videos, I'll be painting more from my imagination and attempting to describe what I'm doing. Process for me is an interesting thing. I'm trying to get better at it. A painting like this where I'm using reference and not having to think as much puts me in cruise control. It could be good sometimes, as it'll give me an in-between between the more complex pieces. Some paintings can take a lot of layers of reworks and studies, so it's quite a contrast. At this point, I added a layer underneath the head layer. You can see how they're organized on the right side. One mistake that I've always done is not paying attention to the layer I'm on. And suddenly, 5 minutes later, I've been painting on the wrong layer. This happens to me when I'm in a rush and maybe I'm listening to fast rock music or something, and I'm trying to match that rhythm. I enjoy listening to music when I'm drawing or painting, but only in the later stages, usually. This is because for me it disrupts my early thoughts and rhythm. Capturing that rhythm early is important for my process, and as some of you may have different ways at looking at this, maybe it works out differently for you. Most of the time, I keep things quiet for optimal concentration. And speaking of concentration, another object that leads to distraction is my phone. This can take me out of the zone, and reaching that zone doesn't always happen, and when I'm able to get back to that, partial interruptions bring me out. A note back to the painting. You may see me hiding the line art in this painting. So why do I do this? Looking at the painting without line art below can give you a fresh look The line art may be covering some gaps in the painting above, and when you remove it, you'll see the background color bleeding through. This will give you the opportunity to make it opaque if the painting calls for that. You may need some of that transparency if you have plans for it in the future. Another thing to look at is the edge work. I've talked about that line width in my earlier video very briefly. If you have oil painted before, you'll know that the canvas along with the paintbrush can create a wonderful texture with every stroke. I feel that in digital painting, you have to work a little bit more to achieve that random texture you get from traditional mediums. Digital programs have packed in texture brushes, but even them have mathematical kind of artificial nature to them, if you know what I mean. You have to use a customize them or blend multiple brushes or actually use real textures from photos which you can overlay and layer into your artwork. All of this is fun getting to experiment with all these tools and software. I'm looking into importing my oil paintings into digital format and animating them one day. Focusing back on the painting, I'll be working a little on the hair. Really just treat the hair as one piece and work on the detail later as you define more of the values. Starting in the mid-range is a good to define the entire shape of the hair. It could be tempting to get into major details early. As I keep emphasizing, begin large. At this point, the painting's looking okay. I notice a problem with the nose that I'll adjust later. The colors are matching well, but blending will make it even look a lot better. You'll notice that on the left side, I'm adding slightly lighter value on the edge of his head. This is known as the bounce light. That's the light bouncing back from a wall or something onto the skin. The color of the wall or the object bouncing the light can affect that shade color. If there's a green object, the bouncing light, then the bounce light will have a green color to it. You can play around with the colors as long as the values and shapes are accurate. Colors are important, but fall very low on the fundamentals hierarchy. Things like shape and perspective are more valuable. Now, that may not apply to abstract as much, but it's a good starting point. It took me a while to really put that into practice. And all of these tips are not hard rules, as you may have a different way of handling things. Whenever painting eyes, be careful. I've made the mistake of going full on white around the iris and other artwork, when in reality it's not pure white. That's if you're going for a more realistic style. The brow and eyelids can obscure some of the light hitting the eye. And on top of that, the eye is a sphere, and light can only reach so much of it. From this point on, I'm just looking to refine my shapes and colors. Nothing is perfect, but I assure you if you keep drawing repetitively, you'll get better. Hopefully over the course of many years of recording my art, I'll get to where I want to. It's a nice feeling when you're able to draw or paint something without the internal frustration that can occur. For me, this would happen whenever I would stop drawing for long periods of time and then attempt to draw again. I would struggle because, one, I never warmed up, and the long time away was detrimental. Everything I tried to draw would be so difficult, and I would get frustrated because it shouldn't be like that. I needed to keep developing that muscle memory, or more like mental memory, since drawing and painting are more mental than physical. I don't have a steady hand and cannot make a straight line. My hands have little to do with my skills. They're an extension of my brain. I've always found it funny when someone would comment on my art and say something in the way of, I must be left handed or have great control with my hands. It's almost like my hands do all the work. But I know they don't have ill intentions with comments like that. I usually just give a laugh. At the end of this video, I edit the nose by using the lasso tool. I cut it out like scissors and move the nose up to fix the length. Sometimes that can cause other problems like adding link to the upper lip area. Just be aware of that. I hope whoever reaches this far into the video has got something useful from it. I'm trying to get comfortable with the content I create. Similarly with my art. Once I get more confident, I'll do more videos of traditional work. My old paintings are becoming less stiff and I'm enjoying them more and more. If you enjoyed my video, like and subscribe. I have links below if you're interested in my products and social media.